Hey there, everyone. I wanted to make this quick video to show you how to do some things in the calculator, specifically regarding graphing things. So I'm going to take a look at example 4 on page 6. And I've got my calculator emulator here. Um, there we go. And let's go ahead and graph this equation. So example 4 here on page 6 is y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5, talking about how many acres of grass left to mow. So if you start on your blank screen, you want to graph things, you want to choose the upper left button y equals, and that'll take you to this screen. I already have an equation there, so I'm going to clear it out with the clear button. And the other thing to keep in mind is sometimes these plots up here are shaded or highlighted, and that means they're turned on, and that's bad for your graph. So if you use the arrows, you can access these plots. And so like if yours looks like that with the plot highlighted, you want to turn it off. So go up to the highlighted plot, press enter, it'll unhighlight it and basically turn it off. So you want those all to be blank. Now we're going to graph this equation, so I'm going to use the negative symbol. Make sure you use that instead of the minus for the negative. For fractions, I like to do parentheses 1 divided by 2 for the negative 1/2. Now for the x's, you're going to use this button here between alpha and stat as an x, a t, a theta, and an n. But if you're in this screen and you press it, it'll give you an x. And then we want plus 5. There's our equation. So when we go to graph it, you can press the top right button, graph. As you can see here, I have kind of a weird window going on, and yours might be like that too. In fact, you can't even see the equation here. So one thing you can do is this zoom button is pretty useful right here in the middle. If you press zoom, you have options to zoom in and zoom out, but we want to go to option 6, Z standard, and this will put you in a standard 10 by 10 window. So if you press enter on that, here we are in a 10 by 10 window, and now we can see our graph. You can also change the window manually by pressing this window button. Here you can see the x min and max, negative 10 and 10. That just means we go left 10 and right 10. The y min and max, down 10 and up 10, right? So that's why we're in this nice 10 by 10 window. Now, a couple things you can do from here. This trace button will let you literally just trace along the curve, and you can kind of see the x's and y's change as you go. But even better, if we press second and trace, we'll get this calculate menu. And the first option here, value, is very useful. If you press enter on value, it'll let you plug in any x value, and it'll tell you what the y value on the graph is, and it'll show you the point on the line itself. So for example, if you're looking for your, let's say your y-intercept, we know the y-intercept is on the y-axis, and that's when x is 0. So if we just plug in 0 and press enter, it'll show you that when x is 0, y is 5, and there's your y-intercept. And we can keep plugging in different x values. Maybe I want to know what happens when x equals 5. Since I'm on the screen already, I can just press 5. It'll say x equals 5, press enter, and I know when x is 5, y is 2.5. And so I can plug in any x value and it'll show me exactly where it is on the graph, which is nice. If I want to find, let's say, like the x-intercept, I'll have to find what's called a 0 on the graph. Now first, I want to be able to see the x-intercept a little bit better, so I'm going to go to the window, and I'm going to extend my x maximum a little bit past 10, so maybe 15. And when I graph, now you can see that we're going up to 15 instead of 10, so I can see this x-intercept, or the 0. So to access that or calculate that, I want to go to second, calculate again, so second trace for the calculate menu. And I'm going to choose option 2, 0. Now the way this function and many of the functions on the calculator work, or on the calculate menu work, is they want you to show the calculator what's to the left of the 0, what's to the right of the 0, and then approximately where is the actual 0. So they call those left bound and right bound, and then guess. So right now it says left bound. I know my 0 is right here, so I want to move the cursor to the left of the 0. So there we go, that's the left of it. Now it asks for a right bound, so I'm going to keep using the arrows. I'm going to go to the right of the 0 and press enter. And you can see how it came up with these two arrows. So now the calculator knows I'm only looking in this region here for the 0. And then lastly, it says guess. So you want to put your cursor close to the actual 0 and then press enter. And there it is. It tells us we have a 0 at 10, 0. X is 10, y is 0. And that's also what we would call our x-intercept. Okay, so on the calculate menu, if you go to value, it'll give you a value. If you go to 0, it'll calculate an x-intercept, which is a 0. There's also things like minimums and maximums, which you'll use that a little bit further in the section. So maybe I'll try to find one real quick. I think there's one. Yeah, let's try this one on page 16. This is from section 4.3. This is when we're graphing things that aren't exactly lines. They are curves, or technically parabolas. So we're going to try this one here, the negative x squared plus 6x minus 8. So I'm going to go back to y equals. I'm going to clear the graph that's there, and I'm going to type in this new one. So negative, remember the x button here, and for squared, we can just use the square button over here, negative x squared, and then plus 6x, there's your x again, and then minus 8. Make sure you're using subtraction for subtractions, negatives for negatives. And let's see, I think, yeah, let's just try this out, graph it. There we go. I'm just gonna go back to Zoom 6 real quick, just for a nice 10 by 10 window, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so a couple things we might want to find here. When we go to the section, we'll be interested in the y-intercept. Notice there are two x-intercepts, and there's also a maximum, and we want to know how to find each of those. So let's find the y-intercept first. The y-intercept is when x is 0, and so we can just go to second, trace for the calculate menu, and go to value, and we'll just plug in x equals 0. And there we go, when x is 0, y is -8, there's our y-intercept. For the x-intercepts, I'll just do one of them again. It's just like we did before, the 0 function. Put our cursor to the left. So there's two x-intercepts, right? I'm going to focus on this one right here. So my cursor is to the left of it. I'll press enter. There's my left bound. I'll go a little bit to the right of it. Press enter. There's my right bound. And then I'll go back towards the actual x-intercept right there. So this tells me when x is 2, y is 0, there's one of our x-intercepts. And you can do a similar thing to find the other one. I actually want to show you how to use the maximum function. And luckily, it's pretty much exactly like we use the 0 function. The maximum function, we know our maximum's right here. And so they want a left bound. That looks good. I'm to the left of it. Now a right bound, so go past the maximum, a little bit to the right. And now guess, put it close to the maximum and enter. And there we go. Now notice, I don't know exactly what algorithm or process the calculator uses to find the maximum, but you can see that it didn't quite, it's basically giving me 3. And the answer is 3. But there's a little bit of rounding error based on whatever process the calculator uses. So if you see something like this where it's 2.99999, just call that 3. So our actual maximum would be at x equals 3 and y equals 1. Okay, so if you had a parabola that opened downwards, you'd be finding a minimum, and the minimum function works exactly the same. In fact, 0, minimum, maximum, even intersect, although we're not going to use that, all those functions work essentially the same way. Where they want you to go left, right, and then middle. Okay, I think that's it. That gives you some idea of how to graph basic functions and use some of the basic functions of the calculator to find, values, zeros, or maximums. Hopefully this will help you out a little bit and help you kind of check your work. Whenever you do these things by hand, you should also be able to do them on the calculator. So thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and that's it for now.